Hello YouTube, in this video I will explain to you what is possibly the most misunderstood part of Gangplank's laning phase, which is his level 1 barrel start. Barrel start level 1 has become the meta ever since his Q got repeatedly and massively nerfed. But how are you supposed to use such an ability? At first sight, Gangplank barrels just seem like this very visible and very slow projectile. And on top of that, it has an 18-second cooldown. Well, this is why I'm going to explain the hidden strength of having such a projectile. And I'm gonna do that by making the comparison to HaytemGP turrets. HaytemGP turrets level 1 make it very hard for you to go walk up to him and just attack him for free, right? It gives him full control over the wave unless you go out of your way to destroy each one of his turrets. Well, same applies to Gangplank and his barrels. Only difference is that the Gangplank has to manually activate his own barrels. Your barrels offer you safety, and if used well, can guarantee you even a free laning phase. That's why in this video I'm going to share my most used level 1 barrel strategies, explain them in detail, and tell you in what matchups you should apply them. Before we get into that though, it's very important to understand what we are actually trying to achieve, first of all. In top lane, level 1 is very important. It's the very first moment where you can start creating a lead for yourself. You can deny CS, get level 2 prio, maybe even get a solo kill, but most importantly, you can control the tempo of the lane. This last point is the most important one for Gangplank. We want to control our lane in a way that we can safely farm up to our item spikes, ideally without dying a single time. And we do this by applying the concept of crashing and bouncing waves. If you're not familiar with this concept, let me explain it to you real quick. Whenever one of the two laners is pushing, eventually all of the minions will end up under the enemy tower. This is what we call crashing the minion wave. After this, the other laner is gonna last hit under his tower, and the minions are now guaranteed to bounce back into your direction. This means that eventually the same will happen to you under your tower, and then it's your turn again. This basically repeats itself infinitely. And why this is so good on a scaling champion like Gangplank is because this guarantees you farm and XP while not being in any risk of a jungle gank. The only thing the jungler can do here is dive you. But if you're good at managing your health and don't take pointless trades right before the minion wave crashes, then it's very unlikely for you to get dove. And even if they decide to dive you, you're at full HP, so you have a lot of room to outplay and potentially even get a double kill for free. But the idea is to make it as hard as possible for you to die to the enemy jungle while you permanently bounce and crash the minion waves. Now, how do you reliantly and consistently crash your minion wave? There are two ways to do this as Gangplank. Number one is the fast push. When playing Gangplank, make sure not to waste all your barrels while farming under tower. If your laner decides to recall while you are last hitting your minions, then this is an opportunity for you to fast push and crash the wave while they are walking back to lane. You need 2 barrels minimum for this and look something like this. You can either put down 1 barrel, start auto-attacking the casters while your minions focus the melees, and then Q the barrel. The other way to do this is by putting down your first barrel, exploding it with your Sheen auto-attack, and then put down the second barrel and this time use another Sheen proc with your Q instead. Only do this when you are sure that your laner recalled or when he's roaming. Now, the other reliant way to always crash your wave is by creating a slow push. You create a slow push by just last hitting the minions only when they are 1 HP. You do not want to be hitting the minions. Only let your minions damage the enemy minions. If you are damaging the minions together with your minions, they will die much faster and you won't be able to create as big of a wave. Now, why do we want to create a big wave? When you create a big wave, it makes it very hard for your laner opponent to fight back. And you want to use the power of the minions to either force him to back off or to kill him for free. You still have to make sure, obviously, that you played the fight well. Don't just stand still and expect your minions to do all the work. And if you notice that he's backing off because he's afraid of dying, then there's no need to overchase for a kill, since you have already achieved your goal of crashing the wave. Overstaying and greeding for a kill will only result in you getting ganked most likely. So now, how do we get up to this point where we can consistently crash and bounce the waves? Well, it starts with the level 1 and understanding your matchup. Here are the different level 1 strats that I use and in what matchups you should apply them. The first and most common level 1 start with Gangplank is the middle bush start. You wait here until the first 3 minions are 1 HP and then you go for a 2-part barrel combo from the bush. If the enemy is a melee champion and they are clueless about you being in the bush, they will walk up for the first 3 minions themselves and you can get a free hit on them at the same time. After this you can look for a passive proc or to start hitting the minion wave for level 2 prio. There's also an advanced version of this strat, where if you place your first barrel at the same time when your minions are at the T1 tower, you create enough time for another barrel to charge up. Then after the first 2 part, you can potentially look for another 2 part right after, potentially forcing your laner to flash or even get a free kill out of it. Once you're level 2, you start poking with your Q, create a slow push. This middle push strat can work against most champions, but champions you want to avoid doing this against are champions that are stronger than you level 1. For example, Darius, Olaf, Riven, since they will always face check the bushes and try to cheese you or run you down. For these level 1 cheese champions, once the game starts, you want to rush to the closest bush in your lane. Position yourself on the most right side of it, then place your barrel on your left side. This way when they walk in the bush with no vision, you get a free barrel and are able to run away. You now have the info that they are in the bush, and you should look to fight when your minion wave arrives. The way you want to fight these champions is not by doing barrel combos. Always space and keep your distance from them, and force them to come into your zone. If they're not confident in doing that, then you're in no danger and can farm safely. Don't make the common mistake and use up all your barrels. We already know that GP barrels have an 18-second cooldown, so you're only sabotaging yourself if you waste them all at once. It's of utmost importance to be very conservative with them. Treat your barrel as a bodyguard in these type of matchups. If your bodyguard is next to you, you can farm and play safely. Only when someone comes to attack you in your zone, you want to use them to keep your laner back. Against these champions that are stronger than you level 1, you want to allow them to get level 2 prio. Look to poke them down while they are pushing. If they do a lazy job at crashing the wave, you can potentially freeze it right before your tower. Eventually, when it's your turn to crash the wave back, you should look for a slow push. It's too early into the game for you to be able to fast push, so the only option here is to go for a slow push instead. Make sure you don't lose any HP up to this point, and then look to crash the wave. Against ranged champions, you want to make use of all the bushes. You want to use them to hide so they cannot auto-attack you for free. The only time they will be able to auto-attack you is when you walk out of the bush to hit a minion. A good thing to accomplish in this level 1 is to force out their ward, that way you can retreat to the next bush and make it impossible for them to hit you. Eventually you'll be forced out of that bush as well, and then you want to just farm safely under your tower. And then for this last level 1 start, I consider this one more of a neutral start, where you just walk up to the wave normally, place your barrel on top of your casters. Same as I explained before, you only use your barrel when they come near you or for a punish, and start hitting the wave for level 2 prio. Depending on how the trades go, you're either gonna be slow pushing and crashing the wave into their tower, or you are going to have to give up the prio and farm under your tower instead. Keep in mind that every situation can be different. It's very important that you adapt according to the situation you find yourself in. There's no one simple guaranteed way to win lane every single time. You have to be mechanically on point and think ahead of time what your plan is. That's it for this video. If you're still left with any questions, leave them in the comments below. I hope this will help in your Gangplank games, and I'll see you in the next one.